Hello, and welcome to another round of How the Hell Did I Get Here with Meg and Rachel. Thanks for joining us. Today on the show, we have Daniella Mestyanek Young. Daniella is a speaker, writer, and organizational behavior specialist. Daniella is a former U.S. Army captain with 2 combat deployments where she became one of the first women who broke the gender barriers of deliberate ground combat in U.S. Army history. In other words, she's a badass. Her passion is in helping large organizations, small teams, and individuals embrace innovation, overcome conflict, and build collaboration. Hi, Daniella. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Yes, we're so happy to have you here. You have such a fascinating background. Escaped from a religious cult and then decided to join the U.S. Army and all the other cool stuff you're doing now that has really not a lot to do with any of that. Amazing. So, Daniella, tell us about your how the hell did I get here moment.
Yeah, so I loved the title of this show because I feel like we've all had this moment, like in those exact words. So, the background story in a nutshell, because the how I get here moment comes after that, was, I was born and raised in this cult called the Children of God, which was everything the American thinks of when you think cult plus worse. And I, at 15, I got away from that, moved to the US by myself, kind of did this whole, put myself through high school, put myself through college, ended up commissioning into the military in 2009, which meant, of course, I went directly to war, did that twice, had a super successful Army career, right? Where I loved what I did. I was good at it. I was part of, as you mentioned, these women doing things in combat for the first time, which ended up changing the culture, helping desegregate the military. Really, really cool stuff. Then I ended up getting out of the military, and I was married to, or am married to, another Army officer. We moved to Seattle where he was posted, had a baby, and I was working at a physical security job, which was nothing that I was interested in. It was just the easiest translation of here's what I did in the military. Here's what a corporation will hire me to do. I'm going to go do that. In the meantime, as I mentioned, we had a baby. And when we had a baby, we decided that I was going to raise her in Brazilian Portuguese, which was a language that I picked up during my cult life in Brazil. Didn't in no way spoke fluently. But we were like, we're going to do this. Sure, chaos is great. So I'll jump right in. And it's incredibly difficult emotionally and mentally to speak a second language all the time to your child. And I gave up 100% speaking English to her. And so it was very difficult. And one day I couldn't say something very basic to my daughter. And I just walked into my office and I just, started crying and was trying to buck myself up with the speech that I always gave myself, which was, I'm doing this, all these sacrifices, all of this sort of like mental and emotional exhaustion I'm doing for her so that she can become whoever she wants to be. And I had this very weird kind of selfish moment that I just thought, well, what about me? How the hell do I get here? That was supposed to be me. I was the girl that came through the incredible circumstances, that did all these things. When did I stop being the leading actress in the movie of my own life and start being the supporting actress in the movie of my daughter's life? And that was, that was a really big deal. We obviously all have the pressures of being moms and putting ourselves last. And I had this realization that I'm 29 years old. I don't want the coolest things I've done to be behind me.
And so what did you change anything out of that? Or did you just sort of know that it was temporary? Or how did you think about after that moment of, I've been subsumed by my daughter? Like, what was the thing out of that?
Yeah. So I changed everything. I left my job pretty shortly after that. And I was literally like, one of the things I've always wanted to be was a writer and a speaker. I'd known that since I studied literature in college. And I was like, I'm just going to go be a speaker. And so I just started I have these stories. I can tell them these different ways. I'm just going to go start trying. And, 6 months later, I had done a TED Talk. A year after that, I had published a major article, which ended up getting a literary agency in New York to sign me. And, we're now in the process of the book deal, sort of all of that stuff. But, something else that was really cool, I think, was that moment of realizing, like, I can't do this all myself. And specifically with regards to my daughter and the languages and basically driving her life and driving my life. But then I kind of realized, well, I don't have to do it all myself. I'm not the only person in the world that speaks Brazilian Portuguese. So I can bring someone else here. So my husband and I did an exchange program, and we had this amazing 16-year-old come live in our house, and she became part of our family. We just went this year to Brazil. We visited her and her family. And in those years, my Portuguese has become so great, I've started using it professionally. And so part of what I did earlier this year was a speaking tour in Brazil in Portuguese. So my Portuguese and Spanish is now at the level because of that I can use the Soul in my work as well, which has been really cool.
Wow, I'm just going to start taking notes because I've always wanted to learn Spanish, and I've tried my whole adult life to learn Spanish and be more fluent. And I've made steps, but I am not even close. I'm still like, kindergarten level Spanish, and can't do verb conjugations yet, right? Like future tense.
It's complicated.
It is. Well, it's not. But I love that idea. So one of the things that we saw in your results is that you're a very high chaos tolerant fixer. In fact, so far, you're the highest chaos tolerant person across any of our types that we've tested for the show. So how do you think being chaos tolerant and fixer, you're focused on team and helping change the world, excuse me, how do you think that's sort of molded your, how the hell moment? I guess one interesting thing I would maybe ask specifically is, do you think you had left that behind a little bit when your daughter was born, that your love of chaos and new ideas and new things maybe? Or how do you think that really worked into it?
Absolutely. I think that, the chaos tolerance for me, I think obviously comes from my background in that I've reinvented myself so many times that it just wasn't hard for me to be like, oh, I can leave this behind. I can leave a very well-paying but dead-end job behind and go build my own thing, and I'm sure I'll be fine. But yeah, I think, the fixer thing makes so much sense to me. When my daughter was born, I had this moment where my mom was there too, and my daughter looked exactly like me. And I started calling her the do-over baby. This is the child we get to raise right, where she gets everything she needs. She gets love. She doesn't get abused. She's allowed to ask questions. And I think without realizing it, I threw my heart and soul into my daughter, as, most of us do as moms. But then I kept having these moments where it was, every time she has a first, she has something amazing, she has those normal childhood moments, it reminded me, almost like, well, what am I doing with my life? I didn't have that.
Sure.
And that came all together. And I think it is so easy for women to get lost in the children and making your life all about them. But if we don't have our own things, you're almost always a little bit resentful then of the children that could go on to be amazing. But what did you sacrifice for that? And I just realized I didn't want to have that be the story.
Yeah, it can be soul crushing. I know some of my women friends, they absolutely number one love to devote their every moment to their kids, and more power to them. But I think there's a lot of us that, I remember when I first had my daughter, it took me until she was 2 before I really felt like me. Like I was afraid I had lost me in having a kid. So that was I remember the moments of like, oh my God, my brain's coming back, all the ways that she's getting more independent, so I think that's a really powerful message that we don't have to, if that's your jam, more support for you. But if it isn't, it's okay to actually, it's not really selfish, right? We feel selfish about it, but I think it's really okay to do what's right for you too. Otherwise you're not going to be any fun.
Yeah,
And that's what I found out, because I felt like it was so selfish. But I mean, I love my life more than ever now. And my daughter is happier than she would have been if I had just stayed in a job that I hated.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Yeah, we've been talking a lot about ripping off the permission band-aids for each other. So the things that, you like can't really give yourself permission to do, whether it's because you're a mom or you're a professional woman in a male-dominated industry, or if you're a young man in, an old man's game, or whatever it is, like ripping off that permission band-aid. So sometimes we have to be brave enough to do it for ourselves. And those of us who are chaos tolerant, super chaos tolerant, are better at it than others.
No, I think that permission bandage thing too is so true. I have all these calls now with people that are like, I want to be a speaker. How do I become a speaker? And I'm like, okay, 2 things. Find a stage, start speaking. Nobody has to give you permission. Get up there. If you're willing to be a speaker and you can speak, go speak.
Go do it. I love it.
I find that to be just so liberating.
Says the chaos tolerant.
I know, beautiful. Because all of our order tolerant friends who will listen to this are going to be like, yeah, and right. There's so much more involved than that.
Well, the second half of that is you won't be good. You won't be good the first time. So just do it for free, get it out of the way, and then eventually you'll become good at whatever you choose.
Yeah,
I love it.
Well, Daniella, we have so much enjoyed having you on the show. Thank you again for joining us, and we'll catch you all next time on the next episode of How the Hell Did I Get Here show.
Thanks for having me.